The waves lapped gently against the hull of the Splendour as it rocked in the waters off Catalina Island. It was a crisp November evening in 1981, and Natalie Wood, one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, was spending the weekend aboard the yacht with her husband, Robert Wagner, and their guest, Christopher Walken. The weekend was meant to be a leisurely getaway, an escape from the flashing cameras, the ever-watchful public, and the pressures of fame. Yet, within hours, it would turn into a tragedy that would haunt Hollywood for decades. Natalie Wood had spent her life in the spotlight. A child actress who charmed audiences in Miracle on 34th Street, she blossomed into a star with roles in Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story. But despite her success, Natalie was no stranger to fear, especially fear of water. She had spoken to friends and family about a lifelong phobia of dark, open waters, stemming from a traumatic childhood incident. That fear made her death by drowning all the more puzzling. On that fateful night, tensions simmered between the guests aboard the yacht. Witnesses from nearby boats recalled hearing raised voices and the unmistakable sound of an argument. Natalie, Wagner, and Walken had been drinking heavily throughout the evening, their conversations growing more heated. Some reports suggest that Walken and Wagner were engaged in a deep discussion about Natalie's career, an argument that seemed to aggravate Wagner. Jealousy had been a lingering undercurrent in their marriage, and it appeared to surface that night in a way no one could have predicted. Sometime between 11 p.m. and midnight, Natalie vanished. By the time Wagner radioed for help in the early hours of the morning, it was too late. Her lifeless body was found floating in the waters, dressed in a nightgown, socks, and a red down jacket. The question that has haunted the world ever since: how did she end up in the water? Despite the initial shock, the media soon turned its attention to the inconsistencies in Wagner's story. How could a woman so terrified of the ocean step onto an unsteady dinghy in the dead of night? And why was there a delay in reporting her disappearance? Even more concerning were the bruises found on her arms and legs, which suggested a possible struggle before she entered the water. Yet, the official explanation remained simple: she had slipped while trying to secure the dinghy. But many, including her own sister Lana Wood, refused to accept that as the full truth. For years, Lana has voiced her belief that Natalie's death was far more than an accident, pushing for a deeper investigation. Hollywood, fascinated and horrified, clung to the mystery. Speculation ran wild, fueled by the accounts of those who had been aboard the Splendour that night. Captain Dennis Davern, once hesitant to speak, would later claim that Wagner had been involved in Natalie's death, that there had been a heated argument before she went missing. The case was officially closed, but the whispers of foul play never faded. The night air was crisp, the waters dark and still. The Splendour, anchored near Catalina Island, swayed gently as its passengers indulged in drinks and conversation. But beneath the surface, tensions brewed. Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken had been drinking heavily throughout the evening. A dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef restaurant had been lively at first, but turned increasingly tense as alcohol loosened tongues and stoked emotions. Restaurant staff would later recall that Natalie appeared upset, exchanging sharp words with her husband. Walken, her Brainstorm co-star, seemed to be the subject of Wagner's frustration. Witnesses reported that Wagner's mood had shifted suddenly, becoming jealous and possessive. One of the last waiters to see them described Natalie as looking frustrated and distant, while Wagner's demeanor was brooding and tense. Back on the yacht, the argument escalated. Dennis Davern, the Splendour's captain, later admitted that Wagner smashed a wine bottle in a fit of rage, shouting at Walken, "Are you trying to F my wife?" Walken, caught off guard, tried to de-escalate, insisting that Natalie was her own person, free to make her own career decisions. But Wagner wasn't having it. Natalie, fed up with the confrontation, left the men arguing in the salon and retreated to her cabin. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. At some point between 11 p.m. and midnight, something happened that caused Natalie to leave her room. She was terrified of dark water, so much so that she had confessed to close friends that she feared dying in it. Why, then, would she step onto the yacht's dinghy in the dead of night, alone? Wagner claimed she must have been trying to secure the dinghy, the Valiant, which had been banging against the side of the yacht. But that explanation didn't add up. Natalie had never taken it upon herself to adjust the boat before, and why would she do so dressed in a nightgown, socks, and a heavy jacket? The bruises on her body, later discovered during the autopsy, suggested something more sinister, perhaps a struggle before she ended up in the water. The timeline was murky. The yacht's crew would later testify that Wagner appeared strangely unbothered about his wife's absence. Instead of immediately searching, he poured himself another drink. It wasn't until around 1:30 a.m. that he finally radioed for help. By that time, Natalie had been gone for nearly 2 hours. By sunrise, the grim reality set in. At 7:45 a.m., a search helicopter spotted her body floating face down in the Pacific, about a mile from the yacht. The dinghy, the Valiant, was discovered nearby, its motor off, its oars inside. There were no signs of an attempt to row back. If she had tried to leave, why had she not used the oars? And why were there fresh bruises on her body? Bruises that seemed to tell a story no one was willing to hear. Wagner maintained that it was a tragic accident, but Captain Davern told a different story, one that changed everything. The discovery of Natalie Wood's body sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The actress, known for her iconic roles, was now the subject of grim headlines. Investigators quickly began reconstructing the timeline of her final hours, but from the start, the details didn't add up. Natalie's body showed multiple bruises on her arms, legs, and face, injuries that seemed inconsistent with a simple fall. An abrasion on her left cheek was especially troubling. The coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning, citing her 0.14% blood alcohol level and the presence of medication. The official theory suggested she had fallen into the water while trying to secure the dinghy, but Captain Dennis Davern later claimed that Wagner delayed calling for help after Natalie went missing. He alleged that Wagner had been furious over her close friendship with Christopher Walken, leading to a heated argument. Other boaters near Splendour reported hearing a woman's desperate cries for help in the middle of the night, yet no distress call was made until hours later. And if Natalie had gone to secure the dinghy, why wasn't the motor running? Why would she, someone terrified of water, attempt to leave the yacht alone at night? The contradictions piled up, yet authorities kept the case closed. Three decades later, the case was reopened in 2011 after Captain Davern changed his story. He now claimed that Wagner had played a role in Natalie's fate. According to him, after the argument, Natalie went missing. But instead of searching, Wagner insisted she'd turn up by morning. This led the coroner's office to amend her death certificate in 2012, changing the cause from accidental to undetermined. A re-examination of her autopsy raised new concerns. Experts suggested that her bruises were more consistent with an assault than a fall. Some even believed she may have been unconscious before hitting the water. In 2018, Wagner was officially named a person of interest. Investigators noted inconsistencies in his statements, and his refusal to cooperate only deepened suspicion. Walken, who had long remained silent, stated simply, "Only one person knows the truth, and he's not talking." With fresh scrutiny, the public wondered, would the truth finally surface? Despite renewed investigations, no charges were ever filed. Walken, now in his 90s, still insists he had nothing to do with Natalie's death. But many, including her sister Lana, believe otherwise. Lana has spent decades demanding justice, convinced Wagner is hiding the truth. She claims Natalie was either pushed or knocked into the water. The questions remain. Why delay calling for help? Why did witnesses hear a woman screaming? And why did Natalie have bruises all over her body? Hollywood remains divided. Some accept her death as a tragic accident, while others see a cover-up. But the mystery endures, and the Pacific Ocean keeps its secrets. Natalie, the actress who once lit up the screen, became part of what she feared most, lost in the depths, her final moments known only to the waves.